Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. It feels like every day AI is becoming more and more a part of our lives.
It really is amazing to see unfold right in front of us.
Yeah, and it definitely brings up some big questions, like how do we grow and evolve as people when we're relying on information that's curated by, well, AI?
Especially since that information could be, let's say, a little slanted.
Or even completely made up.
Exactly, which is why this conversation between philosopher Doris Kaufmann and the AI Claude 3.5 is so fascinating.
Right. I mean, we're talking about an AI, Claude 3.5, actually weighing in on how humans can develop mentally, physically, you name it.
Even spiritually.
Yeah, even spiritually, when a lot of the information we see is coming from AI. Kaufmann really gets at the heart of it, doesn't she?
Oh, absolutely. She doesn't hold back. She asks, how can humanity evolve?
When relying on AI-curated information.
Right. That might be biased or even
hallucinated.
She uses that word hallucinated, which I think is so powerful.
It is. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. This is a question for anyone who's engaging with technology, which is basically all of us.
Right. And especially anyone who's also trying to grow as a person.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, Claude 3.5 doesn't just sidestep the question.
Oh, no, not at all.
The AI actually offers some pretty concrete strategies for how we can, develop in a balanced way.
Which is exactly what we're going to explore today.
Yes. So, first up, kritisch denken. In English, critical thinking.
Such an important skill, especially now.
Totally. And Claude 3.5 uses this really interesting analogy here. It compares us to detectives.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. It's saying we can't just accept everything we see and hear at face value.
We need to investigate.
Yeah, dig a little deeper, question our assumptions, really think for ourselves.
Exactly, like a good detective would.
Yeah, and the AI even gives us some tips on how to do this.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, like setting aside time specifically for fact-checking.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. Or like actually seeking out conversations with people who have totally different opinions than you.
I like that a lot.
It's all about getting out of our own echo chambers.
Which can be so hard to do these days.
Oh, tell me about it. But it's so important. So that's kritisches denken, critical thinking. But then Claude 3.5 takes us even further.
Oh, where does it go next?
To the idea of Ganzheitlichentwicklung, or holistic development.
I love that. It's not just about our minds, it's about the whole package.
Exactly. Yeah. And here, Claude 3.5 brings in this really beautiful analogy of a garden.
Ooh, a garden.
Yeah. The AI is basically saying, look, a garden needs all sorts of things to thrive, right?
Sunlight, water, the right soil.
All of that.
Yeah.
And just like a garden, our personal development needs different elements too.
It can't just be all digital all the time.
Exactly. And this is where we see Claude 3.5 suggesting things like, instead of just tracking our steps on a fitness app,
which so many of us do,
we should actually get out and walk in nature.
Oh, I love that.
Right. It's about moving our bodies, connecting with the natural world.
Experiencing things firsthand.
Yes. And this leads us to the third strategy that Claude 3.5 highlights. Bewusster Umgang mit KI. That means conscious engagement with AI.
So it's not saying ditch all technology.
No, not at all. It's more nuanced than that.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's about realizing that AI is a tool, but it's not the answer to everything. And to illustrate this, Claude 3.5 uses this really simple analogy, a hammer.
A hammer. Okay, I'm curious. How does that fit in?
Well, think about it. A hammer is super useful for certain tasks, but you wouldn't use it for everything, right?
Not unless you want to break things. You wouldn't use a hammer to, stir soup.
Exactly. And it's the same with AI. It can be amazing for some things, but we shouldn't let it become our whole world. We have to be mindful of how we use it, where it's helpful and where it's not.
So it's about setting boundaries, basically.
That's a big part of it. Things like setting time limits for how long we use AI.
Or even creating AI-free zones in our homes and in our lives.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming some of that space for, just being human.
I love that.
Me too. And you know what? This ties in really well with the next thing Claude 3.5 talks about.
Which is, don't leave me hanging.
Strengthening human connections. Because when we're so focused on technology and AI, it's easy to forget about the importance of real face-to-face interaction.
Absolutely. We're social creatures. We need that connection.
And to get this point across, Claude 3.5 uses this really beautiful metaphor.
Oh, tell me more.
It compares human connection to a forest. Imagine all those trees standing tall, their roots intertwined beneath the surface.
Wow, I can see it.
Right. And just like those trees are connected through their roots, we're connected through our relationships with each other.
And just like a forest needs a healthy root system to thrive,
We need those
To
connections.
grow, to feel supported.
Exactly. And this is something that no AI can ever replicate.
So true. So what does Claude 3.5 suggest we do about it?
Well, it gives us some concrete ideas, like creating technology-free gatherings.
Ooh, I like that. No phones allowed.
Right. Or maybe joining skill-sharing groups.
So getting out there and learning from each other in person.
Yes. And even building mentoring relationships.
That's so important. It's about sharing knowledge, wisdom.
And building community.
Exactly. And it makes me think, when we get so caught up in the digital world.
It's easy to lose sight of these really basic human needs.
It is. But it sounds like Claude 3.5 is reminding us to come back to that.
Back to our roots, literally and figuratively.
I like that a lot. It's giving me a lot to think about. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Because all of these strategies, these threads that Claude 3.5 has introduced.
They all come together.
Exactly. They weave into this bigger picture, which the AI describes as a tapestry.
A tapestry. Oh, I love that. It's like all these different threads coming together to create something beautiful and complex.
That's exactly it. And that's what we'll be unpacking after the break. So stay tuned because we're just getting started.
And you know what really stood out to me in all of this?
What's that?
The way Claude 3.5 used all these analogies and examples.
Oh, yeah. Those were so helpful.
They weren't just abstract concepts.
Right.
They were things you could really wrap your head around.
Totally. Like that detective analogy for critical thinking.
Ah, that was such a good one. It really drives home the point that we can't just passively absorb information,
We have to be active participants. We have to question things, dig deeper.
Exactly. Be skeptical, be curious, be like a detective.
And I love that Claude 3.5 even gave us some tips on how to do this in real life.
Well, yeah, like what? Remind me.
Well, like setting aside some time each week to fact check things. Or, making an effort to talk to people who have different viewpoints.
Oh, that's huge.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles, surrounded by people who think the same way we do.
It's so comfortable, though.
It is. But it doesn't really challenge us to grow, does it?
Not really.
And speaking of growth, that brings us back to the garden analogy for holistic development.
Oh, yes. That one was so beautiful.
I know. The way Claude 3.5 compared our personal development to tending a garden.
It just makes so much sense.
Right. Like a garden needs all these different elements to thrive.
Sunlight, water, good soil.
Exactly. And we're the same way. We need to nourish all parts of ourselves.
Not just our minds.
Right. And this is where Claude 3.5 kind of challenged us to get out of the digital world and engage with the physical world more.
It's like, instead of just reading about nature in a blog post.
Go experience it firsthand.
Exactly. Go for a walk in the park, feel the sun on your skin.
Breathe in the fresh air.
Let's be honest, most of us spend way too much time indoors glued to our devices.
It's true.
But Claude 3.5 is reminding us that there's this whole other world out there just waiting to be explored.
And that exploring that world can be just as important for our growth as, reading a book or listening to a podcast.
Maybe even more so. And this leads us to that hammer analogy, right? For conscious engagement with AI.
Oh, yes. The hammer. Such a simple analogy, but so powerful.
It really is. And it kind of cuts through all the hype.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because Claude 3.5 is basically saying, look, AI is a tool.
Just like a hammer.
Right. And a hammer is useful for certain things, but not everything.
You wouldn't use a hammer to paint a picture.
Exactly. And it's the same with AI. We have to be smart about how we use it.
We have to understand its limitations.
Yes. And we have to be mindful of how it's impacting our lives, both the good and the bad.
And this is where those tips about setting boundaries come in.
Right. Like setting limits on how much time we spend using AI.
Creating AI-free zones.
Maybe even taking a break from technology altogether every now and then.
Just to reconnect with ourselves and with the world around us.
And with each other. Which brings us back to that forest analogy.
Oh, the forest. Yes, that one was so beautiful. The way Claude 3.5 compared human connection to a forest.
With all those trees interconnected through their roots.
It's such a powerful image, and it reminds us that we humans are interconnected too.
We need each other. We need those real face-to-face interactions.
And no amount of social media or AI can ever replace that.
Totally agree. And, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face in this digital age.
Finding that balance.
Yes, finding that balance between the digital world and the real world.
Between technology and human connection.
And between all the different aspects of ourselves.
Our minds, our bodies, our spirits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Claude 3.5 was trying to do with all these analogies.
Help us find that balance.
Yes. And to remind us that ultimately, We have the power to create the kind of life we want.
We get to choose how we use technology.
We get to choose who we connect with.
We get to choose how we grow and evolve.
And we get to weave all of these choices into this beautiful tapestry that represents who we are.
I love that image. The tapestry of our lives.
It's so hopeful, isn't it?
It is. It's a reminder that we're not just passive bystanders in this whole thing. We're active creators. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it. You know, after all that, I'm really struck by how Claude 3.5 brought all these different ideas together.
Me too. It's like it all comes full circle.
Yeah. Like, remember those 4 strategies we talked about?
Critical thinking, holistic development, conscious AI use, and strengthening human connections.
Right. Well, Claude 3.5 wove them all into this amazing metaphor.
Oh yeah, the tapestry.
Exactly, the woven tapestry.
Such a powerful image, right?
It really is. It's like all these different aspects of our lives, all these choices we make.
They all come together to create this unique and beautiful tapestry that represents who we are.
And I love how that metaphor emphasizes our own agency in all of this.
Yes. It's a reminder that we're not just along for the ride, you know.
We're not just passive consumers of information or experiences.
We have the power to shape our own lives.
To choose what we focus on, what we learn, how we use technology.
And who we connect with.
Exactly. And that's something we often forget in a world that's so focused on, instant gratification.
Totally. It's like everything is so fast-paced.
And so overwhelming.
That we forget to slow down and really think about what we want.
What truly matters to us.
But Claude 3.5 is like, hey, wait a minute.
Don't forget that you have choices.
You have the power to create a life that is meaningful and fulfilling.
And that tapestry metaphor, it's so hopeful too, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, because it reminds us that our lives are constantly evolving.
We can always add new threads, change colors.
We can even unravel parts that aren't working anymore.
It's a dynamic process.
And that's actually really comforting, you know?
Oh, yeah, how so?
Because it means we don't have to have it all figured out right now.
We can experiment, make mistakes.
We can learn and grow as we go.
And I think that's where Claude 3.5's perspective is so valuable.
What do you mean?
Well, the AI isn't giving us a set of rules to follow.
It's not telling us exactly how to live our lives.
It's more like it's offering us a framework, a set of tools and insights.
That we can use to create a life that's authentically ours.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful message.
It is. So, as we wrap up this deep dive,
what do you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
I hope they remember that they have the power to shape their own lives.
That they have choices.
And that they can weave those choices into a tapestry that is uniquely theirs.
Beautifully said. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to do this.
The only wrong way is to let someone else do it for you.
Exactly. So go out there, explore, experiment, and create the life you want.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.